Kristi Noem is being chased out of Canada by the Meidas Mighty, by the Maple Meidas. You see, a copper mining company in British Columbia called Nova Red hired Kristi Noem to be on their advisory board. That's when Meidas Canada, led by Charlie Angus, started calling out this British Columbia mining company, and your voices are being heard. The Meidas Mighty, the Maple Meidas, the MeidasTouch subscribers and followers across the world are calling out Nova Red for hiring Kristi Noem. Let me show you what Charlie Angus had to say, the leader of Meidas Canada. Charlie Angus talks about the fight to kick Kristi Noem out of Canada, out of British Columbia. Let's play this clip.
Calling on the Meidas Mighty, all of our supporters across Canada and around the world, to work together to organize and take the fight to Kristi Noem and to kick her toxic rear end out of our country.
More from Charlie Angus right here, talking about kicking Kristi Noem out of Canada. Let's play it.
She has no business working for a Canadian copper mining company, and that Canadian copper mining company needs to explain why they think having Kristi Noem working for them is in anybody's interest. So we've been shining a light on them, and the light is starting to break through, and it is starting to have an effect, and we have just begun this fight. Because you know what? There's no room for Kristi Noem in Canada. There's no room for a woman like that. Ms. Concentration Camp Guard herself anywhere except maybe in jail.
Charlie Angus talks about Kristi Noem's background, the horrors she unleashed in the United States and across the world, and why it was such a horrible decision for Nova Red to bring her on board as a member of their advisory board. Watch what Charlie Angus has to say right here. Let's play it.
Okay, you've got to be some kind of toxic bad to get kicked out of Donald Trump's cabinet. I mean, what really marked Trump 2.0 was that he surrounded himself with the worst, the most depraved, and the biggest dumbasses you could find anywhere. But nobody was more toxic than Kristi Noem. I think she was finally thrown under the bus after the horrific violence in Minneapolis, violence where we saw Renee Good shot and murdered, Alex Preddy beaten on the streets and murdered, and she referred to them as domestic terrorists. This woman, while she was head of Homeland Security, continually gaslighted the American people, saying that the threat of terrorism and violence and El Salvadorian gangs and blah, blah, blah was coming from Canada, the Canadian border. So the idea that a Canadian mining company, Nova Red Mining, based out of Vancouver, has just hired her, that's not going to happen. Not on our watch. So we're going to talk about why she shouldn't be there. We're going to talk about this company, and we're going to talk about the incredible response of taking the fight to them to make them accountable for this decision.
Then Charlie Angus, leader of Meidas Canada, by the way, whose background is fighting for workers' rights within mining towns and mining communities. That's what Charlie Angus literally did his entire life. And as a member of parliament, he perfectly dissects the press release from this British Columbia mining company, Nova Red, and he explains why one of the most important things when it comes to mining and when we're talking about stakeholders is respecting Indigenous rights. And bringing Kristi Noem aboard is the worst person for respecting Indigenous rights. Watch as Charlie Angus calls this out and calls out Nova Red. Let's play it.
In their press release this past week, they announced that they had hired Kristi Noem at Nova Red Mining because of her, quote, strategic perspective in government affairs, in regulatory matters, and stakeholder engagement. So let's just break that down a little bit. Stakeholder engagement. You know, one of the key elements of any mining company that's looking to work in Canada, particularly where they're working, Nova Red Mining in British Columbia, is stakeholder engagements with Indigenous people. Is that why they brought Kristi Noem to Canada? The fact that in her home state of South Dakota, all the tribal nations in South Dakota barred her from their traditional lands because of her abusive attitudes towards First Nation people. So is that going to be the way that Nova Red Mining negotiates mining claims here in Canada, having Kristi Noem do the work? On regulatory matters, what were they thinking about regulatory matters? Would that be like her role in building of Alligator Alcatraz? A horrific detention center was basically a series of cages in the Florida Everglades where they sold swag of alligators with ice hats, and they bragged about feeding people to the alligators if they tried to escape. The fact that there have been horrific allegations investigated by Amnesty International against Alligator Alcatraz and some of the other facilities that are there in Florida right now. Kristi Noem went down there with her baseball cap and Botox routine to take it looked like these awful torture porn photos of the cages that human beings who had committed no crimes were going to be held in. So is that where Canada's mining industry is going? Putting the cages together to get those critical minerals out of the ground? On strategic perspective in government affairs, that was the one that really struck me, her knowledge of strategic perspective in government affairs. Was that like when she was defying the federal courts in the United States who were telling her to stop the illegal deportation of people who have been convicted of no crime to El Salvadorian concentration camps, people being denied access to the rule of law, access to legal representation, men who were tossed into this El Salvadorian prison camp who were beaten and tortured and raped? And that happened on Kristi Noem's watch. Is that the strategic perspective that this Canadian mining company wants to bring? I find that appalling. I find that absolutely disgusting that this company is setting up in Canada with a representative like her.
And here's where Charlie Angus talks about what you, the Meidas Mighty, the Maple Meidas, the Meidas Down Under in Australia, the Meidas International community have done to call out Nova Red, how your voices are being heard, and how the pressure can continue to build against Nova Red. This is what it really means to activate the MeidasTouch community and to call out bad actors, to call out Kristi Noem, to call out the harm that she has inflicted on people in the United States and across the world, and why it is so dangerous to bring her aboard. Here, let's play this clip.
When the Canadian people found out that Kristi Noem had been hired, people rightfully got really pissed off. And Meidas Canada called on people to start calling the company and to email them. And, within the day, people were sending us back messages saying the email address info@novaredmining.com, it was bouncing back, that the server had been overwhelmed. And we checked it out, and Google reported there was such a backlash against novaredmining.com that the servers had shut down. Same with the phone number. We gave people the original phone number, 604-805-6340. That number wasn't accepting any calls. And the upside of that is, hey, if you're an investor trying to find out about Nova Red Mining, good luck. You're going to have to wait in line along with 10,000 people who are pissed off that someone who's committed such human rights abuses is now working for the company. But the backlash against the company is just growing. We're now seeing, hey, share price dropped. Did that happen? Wow. And an amazing thing, I got a shout out in the Canadian Mining Journal. Marilyn Stiles, who's written for the Mining Journal for 50 years, wrote, "What a boneheaded move to invite Kristi Noem to join the Nova Red board. It is hard to think of a more toxic individual." She's damn right. She writes, "My work with the Canadian Mining Journal has made me a keen exploration and mining observer, visiting successful mining companies around the world. I know that responsible mining companies can and do exist. I would never recommend," this is not me, this is Marilyn Stiles writing in the Canadian Mining Journal, "I would never recommend Nova Red to a potential investor nor spend a penny of my money on your wildly irresponsible actions." Thank you for that, Marilyn. So here's the thing. I spend a lot of my career dealing with mining companies. I meet with mining representatives all the time. I've spoken at, for critical mineral conferences. I'm at the public prospectors developers gatherings every single year. I've seen the best. I've seen some of the worst. But the one thing I've learned about mining is that it only succeeds if there is a level of social license and trust, particularly if you were going to be working on any Indigenous communities in Canada. This is how the mining industry is learned, that they go in and they act like tough guys and throw their weight around in Canada. Those mines don't get built. They don't get licensed. So Nova Red Mining is announced that they're going to send in some of the most toxic people out of the Trump world as their front face of the company. What are they thinking? Do they actually think that any of their projects are going to go forward? Do they think that they are going to get any kind of social license? You know, I sent a message to CEO Brian Goss. I called him the other day in Nevada. He didn't pick up. I was inviting him. Come on Meidas Canada. Come on and explain why you think Kristi Noem is a good fit for your company and a good face for what you're trying to do. And I encourage you to ask him the same question. Brian Goss, CEO of Nova Red Mining, 775-340-2395. Let me repeat that. Operators are standing by. 775-340-2395. Now, he didn't, of course, answer. I don't know if he's going to answer. But the issue here is that we've been calling on the Meidas Mighty to put the pressure on, and the pressure's just beginning. Because we're sending a message to the monsters that, you know what, they are not getting their way. They don't get to step down from setting up concentration camps and then just cross the border into Canada and sit on boards of directors and take our resources. No, you get the frick back across the border, and you should be dealing with the courts in your country for what you did. We do not want you. We're not going to let you come in, and we're going to take on that company, Nova Red Mining, and we're going to go after it again and again and again until we get some accountability and some corporate responsibility. And that's the role, my friends, Meidas Mighty. We're doing the work. You're doing the work. We're in this together because we are tired of being pushed around by the monsters. So let's take the fight to them. Let's kick at that darkness and make it bleed daylight. So thank you, merci, and miigwech.
Well, there you have it, folks. Kristi Noem being chased out of Canada. You are all letting your voices be heard. We all have a First Amendment right to share our opinion. We all have a freedom of speech. We all have freedoms across Canada, the United States. And while that's under attack, we need to make sure our voices continue to be heard, though, loudly, consistently, and that's what we are doing right here. So great work, everybody. We appreciate you. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers here, and also subscribe to Meidas Canada. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.